Which are the most contentious issues?
I think the issues that have to do with the relationship between the church and the state. I think the churches were the strongest constituency with regard to what they feel are ethical issues that were not dealt with. And then, of course, there's a very strong constituencies that feels very strongly about land and the nature of the devolution units, the counties that are being created by the new constitution. Basically, those were the three broad issues that, divided the yes and the no's.
All right, let's talk about land, because we're told that proposals for dealing with property rights seem to be the most divisive. We're told that land has been allocated historically to members of the ruling elite, and that smallholders who really categorize the agro economy on which Kenya is built are the people who need secured property rights, and that this constitution has to address that. Do you think it does so effectively?
I think it does. I think it tries. You must remember that this is a long journey, and all we are doing is starting. But it's probably the first time that we are taking some bold steps to address what is a very controversial issue about land. Historically, we've dealt with issues about minimum sizes of land, but we've never asked the question about how it makes sense in an agrarian economy to have people, citizens, non-citizens owning hundreds or thousands of acres when the large majority of Kenyans are landless. So it's an issue that needs to be handled, recognizing we are still a capitalist economy. But we cannot deny the fact that this is a real issue that has both socio-economic but also very serious political implications. I think it's a good beginning.
All right, just in terms of what's been decided concerning the executive powers between a prime minister and a president, and what kind of system you're going to have going forward post the grand coalition, some commentators have raised the scepter of tribalism in Kenyan politics, and that this constitution has to address some of these nascent tribal problems that have existed in the political system. Do you think that's an issue?
Yes, it definitely is an issue. I think there are several ways in which the Constitution tries to deal with that issue. One is by ensuring that whoever is going to be elected president is going to be one who is acceptable nationally. We have now a 50+1 threshold in the Constitution. You need acceptance across, about half the country for you to be able to reach the threshold for the presidency. But at a very critical level, one of the other things the Constitution does is to resolve the question of distribution of resources. Part of the reason why ethnicity has become a big issue in political realignment is because the presidency was always in charge of allocation of resources. So in a sense, if you want the presidency, you want the right to apportion resources to those that are in your camp. As it is, what this constitution does is to require constitutionally that a particular portion of the national revenue must go to the regional governments, and that I think will resolve some of the pressure that has been there on the presidential system, which has been seen as a system of patronage, a system that rewards political support. So that, in a sense, starts to resolve the ethnicity issue. But ethnicity, at the end of the day, is very related to poverty. So in my mind, it's going to be very important to ensure that we grow an economy so that those issues are not as critical as they have been in the past.
Now, as you know, Kamotho, we have a guest host. His name is Nyagaka Ongeri, and I'd like to pose some questions to him. Devolution is an issue that he's raised twice now. It will help deal with the distribution of resources. It will help tackle issues of tribalism. What's being proposed is that Kenya's 47 counties must raise funds autonomously.
Yeah, and the whole issue of devolution really goes to, I think, the crux of what this constitutional debate, or a lot of what this constitutional debate is about. There is an interesting empirical precedent when you look at, there's a mechanism called the Constituency Development Funds that were basically set up several years ago that devolved monetary or fiscal authority down to the local authorities. And that actually worked fairly well. So I think that getting this particular portion right, I think, was a huge part of the debate that took place within this constitution, and I think that tomorrow's vote will be key in terms of making sure that this is sustainable.
Will there be any implications, Nyagaka, from where you're standing on the ordinary taxpayer who's paying a tax to the national government and possibly will be levied and taxed differently for public services at a county or a local level?
There is that possibility, but I think this is all about just more the efficient use of resources at a local level. I think the fact that people at a local level can feel that they have control over the usage and the spending of money, I think, is a large part of what the sentiments around this are about.
All right, Kamotho, back to you. We're told that there'll be a review of some tax laws as they exist, and also a review of the clause on intellectual property rights for many manufacturers. That's really key for them in terms of this constitution creating an enabling environment for innovation and just generally for production.
And for me, that is probably one of the beautiful things about that constitution, is that on the one hand, it recognizes the need to have equitable distribution of resources, but it also gives incentives for those that may want to be more efficient, who may exploit their resources in a more efficient manner. And interestingly, with regard to taxation, one of the things the Constitution is very careful about is not to give the counties too much powers of taxation. A lot of the taxation powers have still been left to the national government, so that again you do not have people being punished by double taxation. But I think again it's going to be a process. But I think my colleague mentioned the question of the Constitutional Development Fund. This constitution multiplies the allocations to the constituencies 7 times. So that is a huge improvement, but it creates with it challenges about whether there is absorption capacity, whether these counties will have the capacity to manage those sorts of resources. And the next 5 years are going to be very difficult in terms of ensuring that there's no wastage at that level.